You still believe that female desire is sweet, altruistic, maternal, pathetic. A woman does not desire the way a man imagines. She does not love as poets say. A woman desires like a silent beast, like an ancient impulse that learned to wear silk and smile while calculating. You call love what is disguised survival. You call sensitivity what is genetic strategy. And still you crawl, begging for affection as if it were granted by moral merit. Wake up. Female desire is instinct, not ethics. It is the cry of the species, not of the soul. It is biology, not poetry. A woman does not seek a good man, she seeks a man strong enough to make her forget the world is chaos. But do not confuse strength with brutality. She does not want a tyrant, she wants a symbol, a solid harbor where she can unleash her internal storms without being consumed by them. A woman desires the man who does not flinch before his own darkness. And that has nothing to do with flowers, promises, or daily messages. It has to do with mastery. Mastery of self, of space, of time. She surrenders, but not to love. She surrenders to power. And the more the modern world trains her to deny this, the more she oscillates between desire and guilt, between impulse and moralism. You think she's indecisive. She's not. She's at war. You see a woman shifting between affection and coldness and think, she's confused. Foolishness. She's in control. This dance between presence and silence, between touch and distance, is not emotional fragility. It is choreography of domination. She has learned that the man who is never sure desires more, that the man left in limbo returns with flowers, apologies, and urgency, not because she loves him, but because she discovered that her absence is worth more than her presence. What's the name of this? Seduction, but not the romantic seduction of fairy tales. The kind of seduction that shapes empires and enslaves the weak. And why does the man fall for it? Because inside him still lives the boy who cried for a distant mother, for an absent father, for a lap that never came. The woman who rejects him today is not just herself, she is the shadow of that old wound. And that's why he insists, forgives, begs. He is not trying to win over a woman. He's trying to be loved by the one who hurt him in childhood. Every unanswered message, every prolonged silence, every absence triggers a wound he didn't even know he carried. And he calls this passion. I call it emotional slavery. You still don't get it, do you? You still think the problem is you, that it was your lack of affection, your impatience, your overly direct way. Pathetic. You were convicted for a crime you didn't know you were on trial for, because when a woman projects her own ghosts onto you, you become the villain of a story she invented. You didn't hurt her, you just occupied the space of an unresolved trauma. And then she distances herself, accuses you, punishes you, not because you failed, but because she cannot bear to look inside. And as Freud once said, the ego doesn't deal with pain, it displaces it. And you, poor emotionally starved man, accept the guilt with gratitude. If this already hurts, good. It means you're still alive, that your soul hasn't been completely domesticated by emotional coaches or promises of healing love. Before we continue, I want to know something. Where are you listening from? Comment below. I want to know how far this truth echoes and where men still exist who are ready to break the cycle of guilt and neediness. And if you're one of them, like this video right now, not for me, but for yourself. Because if you can't handle this kind of truth, maybe it's best you leave now. But if you can, stay with me. What comes next is not advice, it's rupture. She calls you toxic, cold, insensitive. But what she doesn't say, what she can't admit, is that she desires precisely the type of man she criticizes most. The man who doesn't apologize for existing. The man who doesn't lower his eyes when she raises her voice. The man who doesn't bend before her explosive emotions. Why does this attract her? Because this man represents what her superego was taught to fear. Power, presence, containment. Everything the modern world taught her to reject, but her unconscious craves to experience. That's why she runs, and comes back, and runs again. Because each approach awakens pleasure and terror. That's not confusion. That's an internal battle. The id wants domination. The superego demands obedience to the new morality. And the ego, this little slave between titanic forces, flails about, not knowing what to choose. So she oscillates, and you interpret it as complicated love, an emotional puzzle to be solved. Don't be ridiculous. You weren't invited to love, you were invited to serve as the arena. And the more you try to prove your worth, the further you move from the only stance that commands respect. The serene coldness of someone who doesn't beg, doesn't react, and doesn't explain. You believe your presence wins her over, that your sweet words, your patience, your loyalty will convince her you're the right man. Pathetic. It's not your presence that excites her, it's your absence. It's not care that consumes her, it's mystery. You show up too much, talk too much, explain too much, and she grows bored. She feels she possesses you, and anything fully possessed loses value, because female desire is not guided by gratitude, it's guided by scarcity, by uncertainty, by doubt. A woman desires what she fears to lose, and she disdains what she knows will never leave. And you, a fool trained by soap operas and therapists, confuse stability with love. No. True, raw, visceral female love is born from unease, from "does he still want me?" From "why hasn't he answered?" She won't say this, not even to herself. But watch her actions, not her words. You will be desired at the exact moment you become absence, the moment you stop begging for crumbs of attention and become the feast that doesn't beg. The man who doesn't need to be loved, that's the man she paradoxically wants to love. But there is something even more tragic and more common than you imagine. The woman who most attracts you, who keeps you up at night, who drives you mad, is almost always the reflection of your oldest wound. It's not her who traps you, it's what she represents. She resembles the one who ignored you, who made you feel small, who once convinced you that you had to be better, to be worthy of love. And you're still trying to prove it, still chasing, still fantasizing that if she chooses you, you'll finally be enough. Foolishness. The woman who traps you most is, in truth, the prettiest cage of your childhood trauma. And the worst part? She doesn't even know it. She doesn't have to. Because the most effective prison is the one that operates invisibly. You look at her and say, she's special. But it's not love. It's repetition. It's the attempt to heal your childhood with adult kisses. But no woman will save the wounded boy inside you. None. Because that boy, unless faced, will sabotage all your bonds. He will turn every woman into a substitute mother. He will demand attention, care, forgiveness, and later hate her for not bearing such weight. You think you love, but you're just trying to survive. And while you seek survival, she seeks power. You reveal yourself, surrender, open up, thinking that this will make you valued. She, on the other hand, observes, tests, reacts. And when she realizes you're emotionally surrendered, she moves the board, not out of cruelty, but because the game demands it. Deep down, she doesn't want to destroy you. She wants to feel alive. And for that, she needs to feel she's facing someone who can contain her, who doesn't bend, who doesn't bleed at the slightest silence. You think she wants security, but what she wants, desperately, is presence. Your solid, unshakable, almost cruel presence, so serene it terrifies. You still think she left you because you weren't good enough. But what if I told you she left because you were too good? Because you gave yourself entirely when she had only thrown scraps? Because you explained feelings while she was testing instincts? The imbalance didn't come from your absence, but from your availability. The feminine doesn't desire what begs. It desires what imposes, what exists without asking for permission, what stays silent, and in that silence forces the world to listen. You need to understand the woman was never the prize. She was the mirror of your strength or your weakness. When you become absent and she seeks you, it's not because she loves you, it's because your absence revealed something in her that she can't control. When you remain silent and she screams, it's not rage, it's despair for no longer being able to manipulate you. And when you don't justify yourself, don't apologize, don't humble yourself, she feels fear, a primal fear, the fear of losing the only man who wasn't conditioned to kneel before her desire. You want respect? Stop explaining yourself. Stop negotiating your dignity for attention. True masculine power does not need applause. It walks with the silence of one who knows he is a choice, not a plea. Presence, not noise. You don't need to be loved to be strong. You need to be whole. You need to be sovereign over your impulses, your pains, your voids. The woman who's worth it will see you, but not because you shouted, because you didn't lose yourself trying to win her. Because you finally understood that no one can be conquered if you've already surrendered yourself. Most men don't lose the woman. They lose themselves trying to keep her. You ask me, but Nietzsche, how can I be strong if what I feel is destroying me inside? And I answer you, stop being proud of your sensitivity. It's not a virtue, it's a vice. A vice for being accepted, being embraced, being understood. You don't need understanding. You need coldness, not the kind that rejects emotions, but the kind that governs them. You feel too much because you never learned to observe, and the man who doesn't observe reacts with desperation, urgency, neediness, and all masculine urgency is an invitation to destruction. You don't need to stop feeling, you need to stop bowing to what you feel. Emotional control is not coldness, it is power. Silence is not absence, it is punishment. And indifference, when used wisely, is the highest form of domination. The woman who feels she can no longer manipulate you begins to see you. A man's presence only becomes relevant when his absence weighs. And if your absence doesn't weigh, it's because you were never truly present. Stop trying to prove you're good. Stop seeking approval. Start practicing detachment. Not theatrical, fake, calculated detachment, but real detachment. The kind that comes from knowing you don't need anyone to be whole. Freedom begins where the fear of loss ends. You're still struggling, searching for answers to the chaos she left behind. But listen to me, she didn't wound you. Your expectations did. Your romantic illusion that love would be a reward for being good. You confused devotion with worthiness. The woman never promised to heal you. She never said she'd stay forever. She simply responded to what you projected. Insecurity, need, idolization. And when she realized you weren't a man but a devotee, she withdrew. Because no woman desires a pedestal. She desires mystery. And you, by exposing your entire self, killed what little desire remained in her. This is the tragedy of men who feel too much. They confuse surrender with slavery. They think giving everything is a sign of love, when it is in fact a cry for validation. You weren't rejected because you were bad. You were rejected because you became predictable, because you turned your heart into a doormat, because you were pure emotion, without structure, without presence. The modern woman won't say this, but she feels it. And what she feels in the end screams louder than any politically correct discourse. You weren't a victim. You were an accomplice in your own emotional downfall. You ask me if it's still worth loving, and I answer, only when love does not diminish you. Only when it doesn't drag you back into the role of a wounded boy begging for affection. Love is possible, but only for those who do not need it. The man who completes himself, who is enough, who builds his own world. That man can love without losing his sovereignty, because he loves by choice, not by need, with presence, not with desperation. He loves as someone who offers, not as someone who begs. And if that love isn't reciprocated, he doesn't break, he walks away, without drama, without scandal, with the dignity of one who knows his own worth. That's why true masculine power is born of silence, not the cowardly silence that fears conflict, but the noble silence that knows its own weight. The man who remains silent when a woman screams, who disappears when she provokes, who doesn't react to manipulation. That man terrifies feminine chaos because she realizes, here, my weapons don't work. Here, my game doesn't progress. And when she realizes this, she retreats. And then she respects. Maybe she desires. Maybe she fears. But above all, she recognizes this man does not bend. And only this kind of man deserves to be loved. But here's what no one told you. The modern world was built to neutralize this kind of man. An entire system, schools, churches, media, romances, designed to teach that the man who is silent, who imposes through presence, who doesn't beg for love, is cold, toxic, insensitive. They want to convince you that to be a man is to be gentle, malleable, emotionally available, because a man emotionally armored is a threat to the marketplace of need. A man who needs no one is too free to be exploited. That's why they train you to be sensitive, to be available, to adapt to everything except yourself. And while you try to obey this script, she tests, she pushes, she wounds, not because she's cruel, but because she needs to know, can this man withstand the weight of my chaos? And if you can't, she leaves, not out of malice, but instinct. Because the unconscious feminine desires the indestructible masculine, the rock, the limit, the no. And you, trained to say yes to everything, to always yield, to prove your worth with every gesture, you fail. You don't lose the woman because you made a mistake. You lose her because you tried to be what you were taught, instead of being what she never dared to admit she desired. And when a man finally understands this, when he awakens from the domesticated fantasy of romance, something changes. He no longer chases, no longer justifies, no longer tries to fix things. He observes, he withdraws. He realizes that his value is not in being accepted, but in being non-negotiable. And then she feels it, because the feminine, no matter how trained to hate firm masculinity, feels an involuntary attraction to what it cannot control. When a man stops selling himself cheap, his silence turns to gold. His absence becomes pain, and her pain transforms into desire. Not romantic desire, but the most primal, most real kind, the desire for what dominates. But to reach that point, you must break the final shackle, the illusion that feminine love will complete you. It won't. No woman is your destiny. No woman is your salvation. When you understand this, a new world opens up. You begin to build not out of lack, but out of will. You train your body, sharpen your mind, establish boundaries, not because you hope to be loved, but because you love yourself enough to accept nothing less than what you deserve. And ironically, it is in that moment that women begin to appear, because the man who does not need love becomes irresistible. Look, I never told you to hate women, nor to take revenge, to withdraw, to become bitter. That would be childish. I told you to become free, to step out of the role of emotional servant, to stop using love as a crutch. Woman is not your enemy, but she is not your redemption either. She is a mirror, a challenge, an opportunity to see yourself through desire, through rejection, through pain. But only when you stop expecting from her what only you can give yourself does the game change. Love ceases to be a prison and becomes a choice. The choice of one who no longer needs, of one who is already complete. And if you've made it this far, if you're still listening, it's because something inside you has already begun to rise. A calm fury, a powerful silence, a new masculinity, not domesticated, not needy, not for sale. A masculinity that does not scream, does not beg, does not seduce, but that walks, firm, present, sovereign. If you feel this, comment now. I choose to be whole. I want to know how many men are ready to abandon the role of emotional beggars and take the place of creators of their own destiny. Like this video right now and subscribe to the channel, but only if you have the courage to be free. Because here, my dear, only the whole ones remain. They taught you that love meant giving yourself away, that being a man was about being kind, that conquering meant pleasing. They threw flowers over chains and called it virtue. But today I break those chains before your eyes, because true love does not grow from weakness. It blooms from the hard soil of autonomy. You are not here to be chosen. You are here to choose. You are not here to prove your worth. You are here to be the worth. The woman who is truly worth it will not be won by those who crawl, but by those who walk firmly, even when she turns her back. You don't need to be desired to be great. You need to be great, and only then maybe you'll be desired. So rise. Wipe that hunger from your eyes, abandon the illusion of sick romance, and look in the mirror like a warrior looks at his sword. With respect, with discipline, with pride. You are the beginning and the end of your journey, and any love that does not recognize that is a waste of time. The new era of man will not be built on tears, it will be built on presence, on silence, on purpose. And if this wounded you, congratulations. Pain is the beginning of healing. I am Nietzsche. And I did not come to console you, I came to set you on fire.